Welcome back. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi arrived in the French city of Biarritz to participate in the summit of the G7 2019, which is headed by France and is to last for 3 days. On the sidelines of the summit, President al-Sisi received in his residency Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte. Presidential spokesperson Ambassador Bassem Rodi said that the Italian Prime Minister stressed his country's keenness on continuous consultations with President al-Sisi regarding regional developments, particularly in the Libyan file and combating terrorism. Rodi added that the meeting also tackled means of boosting bilateral ties in all fields, especially fields of investment and trade, in the light of developmental projects currently taking place in Egypt. The two sides discussed cooperation on the current investigations regarding Regini's case, as President al-Sisi highlighted efforts exerted to unfold the case's facts to bring the perpetrators to justice. The visit of President al-Sisi comes upon an invitation from French President Emmanuel Macron. President al-Sisi is to present the African cause before the G7 summit. A working session regarding the partnership between the G7 and Africa is to be held. 24 delegations, including U.S. President Donald Trump, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and the Prime Ministers of Japan, Canada, and Britain are to participate. Security development, combating illegal immigration, inequality, and facing the usage of internet in the terrorist operations are among the most important files. Human trafficking and boosting democracy are among the basic causes of the summit. Summit host President Emmanuel Macron has invited leaders from Asia, Africa, and Latin America to join them.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday said that he was getting along well with his Western allies at the G7 summit in France, dismissing reports of rifts among leaders as they prepare to discuss global trade woes. However, observers say that major policy differences over trade protectionism, climate change, Iran and France's push for a universal tax on digital technology giants clouded the run-up to the summit. Trump arrived in France just hours after escalating his trade war with China in a tit-for-tat battle that has spooked financial markets worldwide. Underlining the discord, Trump also threatened his host on the eve of the summit, saying that the United States would tax certain French products unless Paris dropped a digital tax on U.S. technology companies. Leaping into the fray, European Council President Donald Tusk, who takes part in the G7 discussions, warned the EU would respond in kind if Trump acted on his threat. On Saturday, Macron and Trump had a private lunch and reportedly discussing the situation in Libya, Iran and Russia, as well as trade policy and climate change. Trump said that they both have a lot in common regarding a number of files.
French President Emmanuel Macron met German Chancellor Angela Merkel before the official start of the summit. On Friday, Macron threatened to block an EU trade deal with several South American states, including Brazil, over the government's handling of the fires burning in the Amazon. Merkel disagreed with her office, saying Saturday that blocking the Mercosur deal would not reduce the destruction of the rainforest in Brazil, although she backed Macron's proposal to discuss the fires at the gathering.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can see now the arrival of world leaders at the place in Biarritz, France, where the G7 summit is being held. We can see world leaders arriving and French President Emmanuel Macron receiving them. And the G7 leaders back strengthening cooperation with Russia after its expulsion from the group in 2014, but believe that it is too early to reintegrate Moscow and return to a G8. Diplomatic sources reported this stance on Sunday. They said that the G7 leaders had also mandated French President Emmanuel Macron to send a message to Iran as tensions rise over its nuclear program.
G7 leaders agreed that President Emmanuel Macron should hold talks and pass on messages to Iran after they discussed the issue at the summit in southwestern France on Saturday evening. The statement was made by a French presidential source who said the priority remained to prevent Iran obtaining nuclear weapons and defuse tensions in the Gulf. And now we are seeing the arrival of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to the headquarters of the G7 summit, and he is received by French President Emmanuel Macron.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have just seen the arrival of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to Biarritz, France, where the G7 summit will be held. The president is expected to deliver a key speech before the summit today and highlight a number of very important issues. We have also seen French President Emmanuel Macron receiving President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, and President Macron continues to receive world leaders from Africa and around the world. Moving on with our news bulletin, the Lebanese army said on Sunday that one Israeli drone fell and another exploded in the southern suburbs of the capital Beirut at 23:30 GMT, causing only material damage. Hezbollah had said that an Israeli drone fell in and a second one exploded near the ground early on Sunday, damaging Hezbollah's media center in the Dahiya suburbs of Beirut. We have more details.
Lebanon's Prime Minister said 2 Israeli drones which fell in the Hezbollah-dominated southern suburbs of Beirut amounted to an open attack on the country's sovereignty and an attempt to foment regional tensions. In the first such incident in more than a decade, one drone fell and second exploded near the ground and caused some damage when it crashed before dawn, close to Hezbollah's media center in the capital's Dahiya suburbs. Hariri said in a statement from his office that the new aggression constitutes a threat to regional stability and an attempt to push the situation towards further tension. The Israeli military declined to comment. The incident took place hours after the Israeli military claimed its aircraft had struck Iranian forces and Shiite militias near Syria's capital Damascus, which it said had been planning to launch killer drones into Israel. War Monitor this year, an observatory for human rights, said 2 members of Lebanon's Hezbollah group and 1 Iranian were killed in the Israeli strikes around Damascus. In Tehran, a senior Revolutionary Guards commander denied on Sunday that Iranian targets had been hit in the Israeli airstrikes in Syria. Lebanon has complained to the United Nations about Israeli planes regularly violating its airspace in recent years.
Meanwhile, a senior Revolutionary Guards commander denied on Sunday that Iranian targets had been hit in Israeli airstrikes in Syria. Israeli aircraft on Saturday struck Iranian forces near Damascus that had been planning to launch killer drones at targets in Israel, an Israeli military spokesman said. Iran says its military are in Syria as advisor and not fighting troops. Iraq's paramilitary groups on Wednesday blamed a series of recent blasts at their weapons depot and bases on the United States and Israel.
The Sudanese new prime minister said that his country needs $8 billion in foreign aid over the next 2 years to cover its import bill and help rebuild its ravaged economy after months of political turmoil. Abdullah Hamdok, sworn in 3 days earlier as the head to the transitional ruling body after the ousting of veteran leader Omar al-Bashir, said that up to another $2 billion of foreign reserves deposits were needed in the next 3 months to halt a fall in the currency. The economist, who has worked for the UN Economic Commission for Africa, said that he had started talks with the IMF and the World Bank to discuss restructuring Sudan's crippling debt and had approached friendly nations and funding bodies about the aid. He also said that he had been talking with the United States to remove Sudan from its list of state sponsors of terrorism, a designation which has left Khartoum isolated from the bulk of the international financial system since 1993.
Arab-led military coalition fighting the Houthis in Yemen said it downed a drone on Sunday that the Iran-allied group has said that they launched in the direction of Saudi airbase. A Houthi military spokesman said the group had launched drones targeting the control towers of the Abha airport and the Khamis Musheit airbase, both in the southwest of the kingdom. The Houthis, who control Sana'a, the Yemeni capital, have stepped up their attacks against targets in Saudi Arabia in the past few months. In response, the Arab-led coalition fighting the Houthis has targeted military sites belonging to the group, especially around Sana'a. The escalation in violence threatens a UN-sponsored deal for a ceasefire and troop withdrawal from the coastal city of Hodeidah, which became the focus of the war last year when the coalition tried to seize its port.
Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on Sunday called North Korea's latest missile test a violation of UN rules and said that it was extremely regrettable. Abe said that these words alongside US President Donald Trump, who contradicted him, saying that the tests were not a violation. The story.
U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe showed their differences over the seriousness of North Korea's series of short-range missile launches on Sunday, while maintaining that they would remain in sync on the issue. Trump, who prizes his relationship with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said the launches did not violate an agreement and were in line with what others were doing. Asked if he was concerned about North Korea's missile launches, Trump said that he is not happy about it, but again, it is not in violation of an agreement. Abe said the launches breached UN resolutions. Launches of short-range ballistic missiles on Saturday were the 7th by North Korea since Trump and Kim met at the border between the two Koreas in June. The launches have complicated attempts to restart talks between U.S. and North Korean negotiators over the future of Pyongyang's nuclear weapons and ballistic missile programs.
Protesters gathered at a sports stadium on Sunday as Hong Kong braced for more anti-government rallies, a day after clashes returned to the city's streets following several days of relative calm. Hong Kong has been gripped by 3 months of street demonstrations that started against a proposed extradition bill to China, but have spun onto a wider pro-democracy movement. Beijing has used a mix of intimidation, propaganda and economic muscles to constrict the protests in a strategy dubbed white terror by the movement. On Sunday, the MTR, the city's metro, shut stations near the main demonstration area in Sun Wan, the second day of station closures in a row. A second rally of a few hundred, some of them family members of the police, was also held on Sunday afternoon. 10 people were left in hospital after Saturday's clashes, 2 in a serious condition.
Some 200,000 Rohingya rallied in a Bangladesh refugee camp on Sunday to mark 2 years since they fled a violent crackdown by Myanmar forces, just days after a second failed attempt to repatriate the refugees. The nearly 1 million refugees now live in 3 dozen squalid camps in Bangladesh's southeastern border district of Cox's Bazar. The story.
Some 200,000 Rohingya rallied in a Bangladesh refugee camp on Sunday to mark 2 years since they fled a violent crackdown by Myanmar forces, just days after a second failed attempt to repatriate the refugees. Around 740,000 Rohingya from Myanmar's Rakhine state escaped in August 2017 during the brutal offensive, joining another 200,000 who fled earlier persecution. The nearly 1 million refugees now live in 3 dozen squalid camps in Bangladesh's southern east border district of Cox's Bazar. Under the scorching sun, thousands joined in a popular song with the lyrics, "The world does not listen to the woes of Rohingya." Rohingya leader Mohib Ullah said the stateless minority wanted to return home, but only after they were granted citizenship, their security was ensured, and they were allowed to settle back in their villages. The refugees offered special prayers seeking divine blessings for people who had died. They had large banners urging Myanmar to talk to them about citizenship and Rohingya ethnicity. The rally came 3 days after the failed attempt to repatriate the refugees, which saw not a single Rohingya turn up to return across the border. Bangladesh and UN officials interviewed nearly 300 families. None of them agreed to go back to Myanmar, where they fear they would be kept in special camps for internally displaced people. Amnesty International said the ongoing violence in Rakhine makes immediate repatriation dangerous and unsustainable, and called on Bangladesh to provide schooling for children in the camps, adding that it would have long-term benefits for Dhaka and the refugees.
And now we'll go to France for the session of the African leaders gathering there with the participation of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Mes chers amis, merci d'être là. On a Donald Trump et Shinzo Abe qui vont nous rejoindre dans quelques instants. Ils sont en train de finir une discussion à l'étage. On espère tous que c'est pour la bonne cause, mais ils vont nous rejoindre dans vraiment les prochaines minutes, parce qu'il faut l'un des autres, le sujet qu'on va aborder est ô combien important. Je voulais d'abord remercier nos amis qui sont présents autour de la table. C'est vrai que l'innovation qu'on a voulu ensemble a été d'abord de vraiment concevoir les travaux de ce G7 avec vous. Les Sherpas des pays ici présents ont été étroitement associés avec une déclaration qui a été agréée sur différents sujets de sécurité, de développement économique, de numérique, etc. Je pense que c'est une étape importante. Je pense que c'était un moment absolument clé. Ensuite, comme vous le savez, on a voulu mettre le sujet de la lutte contre les inégalités au cœur de l'agenda du G7 et parler d'Afrique était absolument essentiel dans ce contexte. Si vous en êtes d'accord, il y a beaucoup de sujets qu'on a abordés. On va essayer de structurer la discussion peut-être en 3 temps. C'est aussi abordé hier soir et ce matin en membre du G7. On est peut-être d'abord et avant tout une discussion. Je voudrais limiter quand même à une demi-heure pour savoir parler de tous les sujets. Cela est lié. C'est un sujet quand même très important pour la stabilité de tout le continent. Donc on puisse avoir là-dessus une vue commune, peut-être porter tous ensemble autour de la table un message commun sur cette situation. Ensuite, on pourrait parler du Sahel, qui est là aussi une sujet de préoccupation à la fois sur le plan sécuritaire. Je vais dire un mot très important et je sais que c'est aussi très important pour Guy. Et donc sur ce sujet-là, il y a plusieurs initiatives qui seront présentées. En ce cas-là, je pense qu'on dira aussi un mot pour avoir une initiative régionale plus large et qui répond aux défis de la région. Et pour avoir un premier temps de discussion sur les initiatives à prendre pour l'accélération économique en Afrique, en particulier sur le plan du digital, le développement de l'entrepreneuriat, et aussi des initiatives portées par la base qui sont importantes, mais qui touchent tous nos pays avec le mouvement santé. On en a parlé juste avant avec l'ensemble des organisations internationales dans la Banque mondiale. Donc on est vraiment un agenda aussi économique partagé sur ce sujet. Je sais combien aussi Cyril, c'est important et il tient à ce point. Est-ce que ça vous convient ces trois thèmes? Est-ce qu'il y a une motion d'ordre? J'ai des accords. Parfait.
Merci, Président.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We have just seen the beginning of the session entitled Partnership with Africa, where French President Emmanuel Macron was gathering with African leaders as well as UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Of course, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was